Welcome back. Another award-winning episode. I don't know if this will win any awards. So far, no awards won. So, this is the 20th show. That's not that exciting. I should have a little more pomp than I do, but then it would be kind of another show. You know, it would be somebody else's show. You're kind of paying me for the lack of pomp, right? I try to keep pomp to a minimum, you know? People are always saying more pomp, and I'm like, no, we don't need more pomp. All right, so I'm just changing some reverb. Back in the 1900s and 90s, I think my what I often consider the first maybe somewhat unique insight I had into music was the topic we'll talk about today. It was back when I was in jazz school. My roommate in jazz school was a guy named Noel Johnston. If you guys aren't following him, you should. He's got a weird alien brain. I mean, nobody sees music the way he does, thankfully. And I can't compliment him without insulting him. He knows that. He knows. Yeah. Anyway, you should be following him. He takes topics that you think you know and shows you a hidden depth to each one of them. So very well worth a follow, especially for the more advanced players. So anyway. So I'm gonna call this subtractive scales. That's what I've called it for several years now. This concept, subtractive scales. So back in the day, I was really driven in my early days. You know, toward the end of high school and then into early college. I was super driven by the need to be very musically different and not and thankfully, you know, I feel like that's I've kept that to some extent, that commitment. But at the time it was a willingness to do really weird music, you know. And now I don't know, weird is too easy, you know. I think the real challenge is finding something that's very listenable, that sounds amazing, that is nevertheless different from what everybody else is doing. That's the real trick, you know. Unique yet very listenable. And people doing, you know, noise rock and stuff, they just, you know, it's kind of the easy way out. And I put these locking tuners on here, this Godot vintage size locking tuners. I didn't know there was such a thing until oh man, I love them. I actually recorded before and after. Not as scientifically as I should have. Anyway, but I put these on last week, which is why I have a high E string now. So yeah, look at that. It's you know, luxury having 6 strings on your guitar. But I've told myself, Mark, you're worth it. You're worth 6 strings. I like that. This has not been a very efficient video so far. Okay, subtractive scale. So in my earnestness to be different and maybe do really odd music, I remember reading about synthetic scales. You know, you can make your own scale. Let's say it's got a 1, a 2, a 1, a flat 2, a 2, a 3, let's say a sharp 4, a sharp 5, and like you get a weird scale going, and then you need to make the chords. You know, you find out what chords come out of that scale, and because that way the scale has somewhere to fit, and you write a song with those chords, and then you can solo over it with your new scale, and you can sing the melody with your new scale, and inevitably, whatever you come up with is 2 things. One, it sounds different than what everybody else is doing, and it sounds like crap. It just is profoundly unlistenable. It's not, I mean, to me, It would have some appeal for the people who pretend that that 20th century classical music is what they love, you know, since nobody actually thinks that, you know. That's nice. Anyway, man, tellies. I'm gonna turn it up a tiny bit. So, but you know, for your synthetic scale, you needed a set of chords that would fit it, right? So, of course, the chords are all, you know, really gibberish, you know, and it's impossible to make something that sounds good with them. At some point, what was it? I don't remember what spurred this experiment, but I tried taking the scale, just the regular scale, and taking away some notes out of it, right? So let's say we've got, now what really helps is to draw this. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But here, I made a very unprofound, uncreative backing track here. So I can solo over it like normal, right? But let's say, so that's all the regular scale, right? Let's say I go through the scale and decide on a couple of notes I don't want to be in the scale now, right? So let's say I just do 1, 2, 5, flat 7, right? And yes, I know, an immediate objection, but we'll get to that. So that scale sounds a bit different than other stuff. Let's say I go through and I subtract different notes. Let's say I do, very interesting, and those are the only notes in the scale. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, and then so whoops, that's not supposed to be in there, but these are, I've got them written down here. But notice what they are. I just made some right before the lesson, right? I haven't done this in a long time, but so my fingers are not apt to it right now, but I spent a good decade doing this a lot. Anyway, notice these little scale shapes. They're just the scale. They're just all the right notes in the scale. That's from the other week. But I've got some taken out, you know, and the same ones in every octave. Let's say I'm going to do this one right here. I may hit some wrong notes as I'm doing. Right? Let's say you just rattle off a lick with that scale, right? With that scale, right? That lick is going to taste different than anything you've ever heard. Now, notice something here. We've got these new scale sounds. I mean, these scales don't sound like scales I know of. By the way, yes, you can hypothetically arrive at these each one of these answers by thinking of an arpeggio. I think it's unlikely that you would. Maybe I'll talk about that later in the video. We'll see. I never really know, do I? I just start jibber jabbering. These scales sound very different than just the minor scale. Kind of, oh, you know what it was? I remember what it was that spurred the initial experiment. It was the question, why does the minor pentatonic scale sound so different from the minor scale, even though it's a subset of the minor scale? What is it about taking away, so, right, the minor scale? and the minor pentatonic scale. What is it about taking away these two notes that yields a very different scale sound? I'm just not playing notes. I'm not coming up with a new combination altogether. It's just I'm skipping over a couple of notes. And yet, let's face it, I mean, this minor pentatonic does sound different than that, right? And that question led me to that. Well, what if we took the scale and took out different notes? I know that's a big reverb for what I'm playing. It's a ridiculous choice. Right? Like, let's say I take certain notes in each octave, and just stick with those, right? So something about taking away notes from a parent scale gives you a new scale flavor. But here's the kicker. And so I think that, to me at least, was very counterintuitive. Why is it that taking away notes from a scale yields a new sound, as opposed to something that so obviously sounds like a subset of the original sound? To me, these don't sound like a subset of the major/minor scale. They just sound like a brand new scale. But here's the kicker. The synthetic scale approach, where you're just making up a new scale altogether, and where do those scales fit? Well, they fit over the chords that they produce, right? The chords that scale gives birth to, which are hideous monstrosities, right? And again, you make a song out of them. That song is crap. It just sounds like crap, almost without fail. I mean, I've never heard one that sounded great to me. Obviously, there are subjective judgments here, but where can you use these shapes? You know, that thing I just played. So 2, flat 6, 5, and 2. Sorry, 4. Sorry. You see where I'm waffling on how to should I call this one or this one? But so, right. Where can I play that? Do I need to come up with a new set of chords, or can it go over this? Right? It just fits over where all the other scale, the regular scale fits, which is to say, freaking everywhere. Everywhere. Let's say you're doomed with with having a Maroon 5 cover band gig. First of all, I'll pray for you, and second of all, you could do this stuff on every one of those crappy songs, right? Every single one of them, and you so it's these subtractive scales fit everywhere that the original scale fits, and the original scale in this case is just the major scale, the major/minor scale, the scale. Sooner you start thinking of it as just the scale and the modes as just subsets of or literal modes. I think we talked about this, modes. Did we talk about? I can't remember if when I talked about a lid plumma, if I got into modalism and what the meaning of the term mode in philosophy and in just philosophical history. It's very rich meaning. Anyway, but so all of these work. So let's say we take a different scale. Let's say we take. In fact, I'm going to keep this going because the scale I'm going to use here is what most people call the blues scale, right? So. Right? With the minor pentatonic with that flat 5 added, right? Let's take out some notes from it. In fact, let's take out anything beside the flat 5. So let's either take out the 4 or the 5. In fact, let's go ahead and take out the 4. So our new scale is 4, sorry. So this reverb is a terrible choice. So right? Sounds really super evil. Let's take out the 5 instead. We're gonna keep the flat 5. So our scale is right. Super evil sound. Or by the way, you can take out the in other words, I'm taking out the 4 and the 5. I'm left with a half diminished arpeggio. Now, for a lick, just one lick that goes by really fast, that's going to sound freaking incredible. I'm not very adept at it right now, but that's going to sound amazing to hit your listeners with for a second. So the place to find new scale shapes, strangely enough, is in your old scales take away notes. I don't know why. It just works. It does. And you should be making good use of it. Okay, so I said, oh, by the way, so yeah, you just come up with a combination that you really like. You're going to do 1, 2, flat 3, flat 7. 1, 2, flat 3, 5. Sorry. What? Sorry. Did I say 5? Dang it, I don't know. It's been so long since I've done this, but you get the idea, right? Even if I'm doing a crap job of it, right? A decade ago is probably the last time I really did this, but it was really cool for the decade before that. So, anyway, but I'm bequeathing it to you as I bequeath things very often. I walk around bequeathing stuff all the time. So, so this is yours now, and so come up with, obviously the job here isn't to plumb the depths of this, right? You can't possibly learn all the combinations. Pragmatically, you can't. Go come up with one that you like, get it very under your fingers, which is my failure today, is having any of them under my fingers. But get it very get that one example under your fingers, right? Start rattling off licks every once in a while with that. They will turn everybody's heads, guaranteed. When you get to where you want a new sound, go back and do it again. Just write up a new one, get it under your fingers, boom. Now you got 2 unique sounds that will work on every freaking song, right? And will give you very unique lines, right? Subtractive scales. Okay, so I was going to mention, yes, it's hypothetically possible. With some of these, it's more likely than others, but that you would come to every one of these same conclusions thinking arpeggios. Like, well, yeah, but that's just the first one I played. I remember it was just the 1, 2, 5, flat 7, and you'd say, well, that's just a 7 sus2 arpeggio, right? Yes, that's true. With a lot of these other ones, you could define them as arpeggios. The issue isn't could you come up with these ideas using some other paradigm. It's would you come up with them, right? And so I think one of the things that I look for in the way I like to think of these things is in terms of fertility of ideas, right? That there are multiple ways you could think of scales, chords, any theoretical approach. Any bit of music theory, there are multiple ways you could do the math. That's just the way math works, right? How many numbers can you add that will reach 1,024, right? It's just innumerable, right? I mean, if you count non-integers, of course. It's literally an infinite, right? There are multiple ways of coming to the same conclusion. The issue is, would you likely come to that conclusion? Is this paradigm likely to provoke these ideas in your head, right? And that's where I think subtractive scales is very likely to get you to find new sounds, and to find new sounds very quickly. Thinking of it like arpeggios, which by the way, virtually no one really does, or in a way that would come up with a lot of these examples. is very, that paradigm would be very unlikely to provoke really cool creative ideas in any sort of short period of time, right? So I think in terms of fertility, that a some theoretical approaches are from them, really creative ideas will just come out very quickly, and others it's a more hideous, complex bit of math. So yeah, yes, that was 20 episodes. They haven't gotten any better. They are pretty bad still. Yeah. As usual, let me know what to talk about. If you're something's just killing you and you want some help with it. And also, I know I owe everybody or the people who are into the writing, who watch the writing video. I owe part 2. I will do that this week. I know I said that last week, and I just didn't get around to it. And so this week, yeah. So I'm gonna try to start setting a schedule, like Tuesday or Thursday morning, like 9 a.m. Central Time. How about that? Does that sound good? 9 a.m. Central Time, Tuesday or Thursday morning, or some weeks both. It depends. I mean, it's not going to be it's not going to feel like an obligation for me. So, yeah. Go listen to Fantastic Boom. If anybody's going to Shellraiser outside of Vegas, I mean, I doubt anybody is, but I'm playing with the Besnard Lakes, their whole set, which would be a blast. I freaking love that band, and lucky me. A band I really like, No Joy, is going on right after us, and so is Mercury Rev. Gonna be pretty sweet, man. Okay.